Listen, it's going to be incredibly humorous to see all of the mentally unstable and mentally ill sickos spin this into a narrative where Jericho is a turncoat, he's a traitor, he is a Judas when he ends up back in WWE. Chris Jericho's time in AEW is probably one of the more important things in their history. The last 2 years have been downright terrible. It has been embarrassing. Deplorable, embarrassing television, legit channel-changing heat. I think Solid Monster had a super chat meme of Jericho and the Learning Tree that was probably his most popular super chat of all time. Something about the Learning Tree, fuck that tree. He was a running gag and a running meme. Not only with the fan base, but on social media. His music has been an incredible downgrade from what Fozzy used to be. His in-ring ability hasn't been what it used to be. He's 54 years old, and he does nothing to enhance AEW television. Like, you know when your time is up. Jericho's time is up in AEW. The fans know it. Jericho knows it. You know it. I know it. Tony Khan, most importantly, knows it. There is absolutely nothing that is wrong with admitting that. Nothing. Jericho, with the Learning Tree, came very, very close, like dangerously close to ruining whatever great legacy he had accumulated for himself. If it went on anymore, he would have been in a position to tarnish his great career with the bullshit that he was doing on AEW television. And the fucked up thing is, nobody hated Chris Jericho. Like, I don't hate Chris. How could you hate Chris Jericho? Why would you hate Chris Jericho? You might have your reasons. I'm not one of those people that's going to hate Chris Jericho. He stayed on AEW television at least 2 years longer than he needed to. He was given creative control to go out there and do what he wanted to do. Work with who he wanted to work with. Surround himself with who he wanted to surround himself with. Tony Khan actively knew that the Learning Tree was a ratings killer, an interest killer, downright making AEW uncool, and he allowed this terrible television to exist over 2 years on AEW television without saying anything to Jericho personally. We didn't hate Chris Jericho. We just hated the terrible television that Chris Jericho was allowed to create because Tony Khan couldn't tell him no. Tony Khan doesn't tell anybody no. Tony Khan tells everybody, do what you want, and if it really comes down to it where I need to say no, he'll say no. But this was something that he afforded Chris Jericho to do for close to 2 years, and it ruined not only Jericho, everybody around him, but it ruined any television show that he was a part of. The sickos are going to spin this into a narrative that he's a turncoat, a Judas. He turned his back on AEW. How could he? He sucks. He's old. He's fat. He's this. He's that. We don't need him. Which is sad because Jericho's contributions to AEW pretty much outshine anybody that's currently in the company, including Jon Moxley. Without Chris Jericho, there may not be an AEW that we speak of today. He was legitimately one of the unofficial founding fathers next to the actual founding fathers. He's the reason why AEW was given a platform. He was given the opportunity to bring AEW into every single home that had AEW visible to them. He gave AEW a recognizable feel. He gave AEW that feeling of true competition against Vince McMahon's evil empire. Chris Jericho was the face of change. Chris Jericho was the veteran that wanted to take the entire upstart company that was AEW in 2019, and he solely said, give me the ball, boss. I will put this company on my back because I know exactly what I am able to do to help you get this company where it needs to be. Why would you ever look at that in 2025 as anything but monumental? You could sit there and cite all the nasty things and all the terrible things we said about AEW Chris Jericho creative over the last 2 years. That doesn't mean any of us who said any nasty things about the obviously terrible television that we were given over the last 24 months, that doesn't mean we don't know, acknowledge, and appreciate what Chris Jericho has done for AEW. The sickos are going to spin this into a narrative that makes him out to be the ultimate villain and the ultimate bad guy, just like everybody else that's left and gone to WWE. Fuck them. Meanwhile, this is not one of those situations, which is sad because it almost feels like, and it almost seems like, most of the AEW sickos that remain, all 500 to 600,000 of you weekly, and that number keeps getting lower and lower every single year, it seems like more people care about the company and have been manipulated and taught from the upper brass there that all it is about the company. They don't give a fuck about the performers. The fan base, the sickos, the mentally ill, they don't care about the actual performers. They care more about the company than they do the performers performing and wrestling for the company. How could you look at anything that Chris Jericho did and turn the other way and not acknowledge it? How could you look at Chris Jericho and say, he's a Judas, he's a turncoat? You, the mentally ill sicko watching me, you know for a fact that Chris Jericho's time in that Chris Jericho's time in AEW is up and that it's time for him to go back to WWE. What does that have to do with anything? You, out of everybody else, knows that it's time. You, yourself, don't want him back on AEW television. So what's the problem if he ends up going back to WWE? Who cares? Who cares? Acknowledge what he's done to give AEW the platform that they have right now, to take that company to where it has been and where it is right now as the first ever AEW World Champion. Acknowledge his contributions. Thank him for his contributions. Thank you for what he's done. And say goodbye. That's it. That's all you need to do. Tony knows that Chris Jericho's time is up. Normally, Tony Khan is in his feels. He feels with his heart. He feels with his emotions first before he thinks with the small-sized brain he has up in his head. Tony knows that Chris Jericho, more than likely, is headed to WWE. He's not going anywhere else. If he's not staying in AEW, which I don't know why Jericho would want that, I don't know why Tony would want that. Chris Jericho's not going to enhance AEW business any more than what we see now. There's no benefit in keeping Chris Jericho. There's no creative benefit. There's no business benefit to keep Chris Jericho in AEW. The only reason why Tony Khan would keep Chris Jericho in AEW is to keep him away from WWE. That's it. And that is just a waste of money. That's not putting business first. That's putting, hey, fuck those guys. I don't want you to go over there. Stay here and we'll just pay you. Why would Jericho even take that offer or entertain that offer? Out of everybody, the fans know it, and most importantly, Tony Khan knows it. Jericho's time in AEW lasted longer than it needed to. 2 years longer than it needed to. It's over. Tony's got an ear and eyes all over social media. He's probably operating under 9 burners, and he knows exactly what people are talking about, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. He sees it all. And if he's not there with his 9 burners, he's got 18 other fucking people in Jacksonville scouring social media. He knows. What Tony should do is tell Chris Jericho, I appreciate everything you've done for me. Man up. Tell him exactly how you're feeling. I appreciate everything you've done for me. You are an invaluable asset to this fucking company. Nobody will be able to do what you've done for us. Thank you. I acknowledge you for what you did. Thank you for all your contributions. You helped get us to where we are today, and you are absolutely and will forever be a founding father of AEW, not named the Elite, Kenny Omega, and Adam Page, and Cody Rhodes. If there's an AEW Hall of Fame, Chris Jericho should be the absolute number 1 in the AEW Hall of Fame. It'll probably end up being Sting, because Tony's a mark. But outside everybody else, it should be Chris Jericho. That's the level of importance that Chris Jericho brought to AEW. I would go a step further. If I'm Tony Khan, normally he's in his feels. He operates with his fucking emotions first before anything else. Because you know the fan base is going to be, oh, Judas, oh, turncoat, oh, this, oh, that, fuck this guy. We didn't need him. He's old, he's fat, he's this, he's that. Tony welcomes that type of behavior because he was once upon a time that person. He is a former sicko. If Tony really wants to change the game and Tony wants to break the mold, Tony should publicly acknowledge, even though he knows exactly where he's going. There doesn't have to be a mention of where he's going. Tony should publicly acknowledge when the time comes that Jericho is not being brought back to AEW. I've made the decision. We've made the decision to mutually part ways. And we could never thank Chris Jericho enough for his contributions. And we acknowledge him as one of the unoriginal, or the unofficial rather, as the original member of the AEW roster, number one, first ever AEW world champion, one of the unofficial founding fathers of AEW, and we can never thank him and repay him for what he's done for AEW. I would publicly acknowledge that on social media. That way, it gets spun into a positive narrative for what he's done for the company, because let's be real, without Jericho, the company isn't where it is today, and without Jericho, that company isn't where they were when they were battling WWE in the early stages of their life cycle. Acknowledge it publicly. It would spin the narrative to positive instead of negative, and thank him for what he's done. So the AEW sickos may look at their boss and say, hey, if Tony's doing it, then maybe we should follow suit, because that's exactly what they are. Most of the fan base follows what the leader does, and Tony's a terrible leader. Because Tony acts as one of them instead of acting like a fucking professional and a boss. That's what I would do. That's exactly what I would do. I don't see that happening because everything's got to be competition, and fuck them and fuck WWE and fuck AEW, back and forth, the pettiness, the bullshit, the garbage. Never going to happen that way. In a perfect world, that's exactly what I would do. If there's no ill will, why shouldn't you acknowledge it publicly? Who gives a fuck where he's going? If Jericho is going back to WWE, I know there'll be a large pocket of people who give the answer of, oh, I don't care, oh, this, oh, that, Jericho's old, and all this other shit. So it won't be just coming from the sickos. It would be from the WWE side as well. He's old, we don't want him, this and that. You hated him over there, now you're over here. You didn't like what he was doing over there, but now you're going to praise and glaze him over here. It's not about that. It's not about that. He created bad television. We gave an opinion on bad television. If he doesn't create bad television, if he comes back to WWE, then we would appreciate the good television that we're getting. Because that's all we want as fans. We want good television that doesn't insult our intelligence and is just good. We just want good television. If Jericho comes back to WWE, it does set off a couple of questions in my head. Number one, WWE is obviously going to be in their feels. Well, look, we just took yet another cornerstone, a face of AEW, and he came back home. What is the perception of AEW going to look like if Jericho, a founding father, just gets up and leaves and goes back to WWE? You're going to get that sense of Jericho abandoning ship, for sure. What else is going on? Why did he leave? Why didn't he want to stay? Why didn't he want to take a more backstage role? Why didn't he want to work with the younger talent? Does he not believe in the vision anymore? Blah, blah, blah. Become a producer. Be a part of creative. This and that. There's a lot of things that Jericho can do after pro wrestling in AEW, which is going to raise a lot of red flags. Well, why is he leaving? I know that's going to cause some discussion, because it certainly is a viable thought. Why is he leaving? Why is he abandoning ship? What does that mean? Does he not believe in the vision that he created? Have things changed there where Jericho just doesn't give a shit anymore? What's going on there, really, that Jericho doesn't want to be a part of it? Meanwhile, WWE is going to gloat that they took yet another cornerstone of AEW and he came back home. The WCW comparisons are never going to go away if you're AEW. All the big-time veterans go over there, and then they take the money, and then they go right back home to WWE. It's exactly what it's going to result in. All these talking points, all these discussions are going to be talked about until Jericho eventually makes a decision on whether he's staying or going. Jericho back in WWE is an interesting aspect. I could see it. I'm predicting he shows up in the Royal Rumble if he does jump ship, which wouldn't be a surprise at all because that's the perfect time for a return. If Jericho's back in WWE, there's a lot of good that comes with that, especially if you're WWE and you're a numbers business and you're just a business in general. They look at Jericho as dollar signs. And he looks great from what I've seen on his Instagram. He looks to be, right now, better than he's ever looked in the last few years. So clearly he's getting ready for something. Or maybe he just didn't look at himself as top tier anymore after all the fans and all the dissension on social media, and he made some appropriate changes to his lifestyle. Good for him. Part-time. Only when needed. You're a pro wrestling fan and you're watching me right now. There's no way you could look me in the face and tell me that Jericho still doesn't hold value as a part-timer. Used only when needed, sporadically, rare. A feud with Cody Rhodes, a feud with Sami Zayn, a feud with Kevin Owens when Kevin Owens gets hopefully back to WWE after his neck surgery. Cody, Sami, Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, Rey Mysterio. The list goes on and on. Randy Orton. There are names there that he could have solid work with while rounding out his career and retiring at a WrestleMania. There is money to be made. We all know Jericho knows how to reinvent the wheel. He could go back there, reinvent himself all over again like we know he is very good at. He's usually very good at that. I'd love to see the Painmaker back. I love the Painmaker gimmick. Maybe he goes nostalgia. Maybe he brings back the list. Maybe he goes back and brings that Chris Jericho back that feuded with Shawn Michaels, which personally is my favorite Chris Jericho. That was fucking unbelievable. Maybe he goes and does that. Maybe he doesn't change it all. Maybe a fresh coat of paint, some new opponents, a new lifestyle, a new look, looking great. A rejuvenated Chris Jericho could also be a very good asset to WWE. Nothing changed. To show up on television, looking good, looking like the rock star he is, and getting in there and having another couple of years and then retiring at a WrestleMania. Maybe he doesn't need to do anything. But you can't sit there and look at me and tell me he still has that AEW stink on him. He's going to be great, and he's going to look great in the WWE, and he's still going to have a lot of value left, even if it's 2 or 3 years worth before he retires. Talk is Jericho could end up in the Fanatics podcast family, just like Logan Paul and The Undertaker, Cody Rhodes, Stephanie McMahon. The Monday Night Raw podcast with Sam Roberts and whatever her name is, his co-host that nobody watches. That's also a great deal. We're going to get Chris Jericho documentaries. We'll see Chris Jericho top 10s on A&E, and we'll get Chris Jericho WWE vault matches and career retrospectives on Chris Jericho. They're just waiting on that stuff. Everybody's like, oh, him and Triple H don't see eye to eye. Well, neither did CM Punk and Triple H. Look at what happened there. What are you talking about? The day and age of not seeing eye to eye when money is to be made is long gone, bro. It's long gone. What could you do for me? What could I do for you? Let's make some money and the world goes round and round. We don't have to like each other. This is a business of adults, not a fucking indie playground with one sandbox and Tony Khan lets everybody fucking do what they want to do. This is a business, not AEW. There's money to be made. I do believe the best move for Chris Jericho is to go back to WWE. I think the best move is for Tony Khan to admit to Chris Jericho that the company has moved past Chris Jericho, but we thank him for his contributions and everything that he's done to get AEW in the position that it's in today. I would publicly acknowledge it. I would take that money that you were allotting Chris Jericho with this multi-million-dollar contract you were giving him. I would take that money that he's probably asking for, and I would put it in getting a writing team together and getting a writing team situated for AEW Dynamite and Collision. That's where I would allot that money to. I'm speaking out my asshole right now, but that's exactly what I would do. And if I'm Tony Khan, I'm publicly acknowledging the contributions of Chris Jericho because we all know exactly where he's going to end up. There's no shame in that. Be a better man and be the leader that the sickos need because he's not a Judas. He's not a turncoat. He's not evil. He's not going to be anything negative. He should be looked at as the original face, the first ever world champion, and the guy who set the blueprint for what AEW is. That should be celebrated. I find it very weird that he's going to get the same amount of hate as everybody else that left the company because he's not with the company anymore. I don't get this narrative that everybody cares about the company and just comes off as if they don't care about the performers working for the company and wrestling for the company. Jericho still holds a lot of value if he ends up back in WWE, but in a very rare instance, part-time is where it will be best. We don't want to see an oversaturation of Jericho like we saw in AEW. We don't want to see him overexposed. The less, the better. Quality over quantity. Jericho still holds tremendous value in WWE, especially from a business perspective. And as far as a career perspective, it's probably the best landing spot for him because he still has a great look and some great stories to tell. He's too creative to not go back there and just let his career die on what we last saw with the Learning Tree.